Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're trying another deck using cards from the new Forgotten Treasures expansion, using what is definitely the weirdest card from the entire set. And given how this week's seasonal event randomizes our deck, we're back playing in Standard, so let's go take a look at the deck. So today we'll be playing a Nilfgaard Enslave 5 Kolgrim deck that thins out as many cards as we can from our deck to increase the effectiveness of Kolgrim, because he'll get boosted based on the difference in the number of cards in our deck and the number of cards in our opponent's deck. With a little help from our troll friend, because I know this card may look terrible, but I'll show you how it's anything but that. So in round 1, our goal is to thin out as many cards from our deck as possible. That includes Roach, Knickers, the Wolf School Trio, and yes, potentially even the Troll Porter, which I know looks ridiculous, but actually can help us quite a bit. But more on this card later. We can also increase the number of cards in our opponent's deck, which will also increase the effectiveness of Kolgrim using Assire, Cynthia, and Coded Weapons. And as soon as our opponent's deck has more cards in it than ours does, we can play a Viper Witch or Adept to get a point per turn. We can even use the Operator to create additional Viper Witch or Adepts, especially because the one on our opponent's side of the board is not going to get boosted. We can even use that copy on our opponent's side of the board to create more of them on our side of the board using Obsidian Mirror. So play as many cards as you need to play in round 1 to win. It does not matter how many cards you go down. In fact, you would actually prefer to play almost all of your cards in round 1 as long as you still have the chance to play Yawn. Because that way, we can set ourselves up for round 2 and or round 3 when we draw into all of our best cards. And if your opponent passes early and you've already played Yawn and you don't have any other important cards in your hand remaining, like say Kolgrim, then you can play the Troll Porter, banish the rest of your hand, and draw the cards to replace the ones that you banished, and in doing so, thin your deck even further. That way, in round 3 you can drop Ffion, our defender, for protection, then play Kolgrim for all the big boosts, and the reason why you might want to play additional cards in round 1, even if you've already won the round, is because that way you will more quickly get to Adrenaline 1, which means you'll have more turns for Kolgrim to get boosted, even if you pass well before your opponent does. And of course we can use Letho Kingslayer to create another Kolgrim to double the boosts that we get every turn. So that means once you're down to 1 or maybe even 0 cards left in your hand, you pass in round 2, and every turn those Kolgrims get boosted, and your opponent will struggle to keep up, even if they continue to play cards of their own. Then if for whatever reason you are unsuccessful with 2-0 winning your opponent, you can use Renew in round 3 to get Kolgrim back and do more boosting. So there's a look at the deck, and like I said, it is all about maximizing the number of boosts that you get from Kolgrim, which means that even the Troll Porter can help you out. So let's go see it in action. Alright, so going up against Northern Realms here, and we'll go first. Okay, so we have a lot of cards in our hand that we do not want to have in our hand. Most importantly, we absolutely must get rid of Kolgrim. Second most important is that we dump Letho, and third most important is that we dump Ffion. So we get rid of all of them. And it does mean we have at least one other brick, that being Roach. We can fix that, though, with Cursed Scroll. First, what would we like to do? I mean, I suppose we could go with a Viper Witch or Adept right off the bat. Otherwise, an Operator into Viper Witch or Adept should also work. That might be preferable. Why don't we do that? Because that'll also, once we do it, get... Oh, I was going to say Roach out. Roach is in our hand. No, so normally that would be really good first turn play because that means you thin immediately and you can trigger the Viper Witch or Adept immediately. But no, we need to get rid of Roach first, and we can't do that until we play a card because only then can we use Cursed Scroll. Alright, so we got a little ahead of ourselves there. Blue Stripes Commando. We could, and perhaps should, destroy. I'm not sure we want to do Coded Weapons with that because they want to have additional Blue Stripes Commandos. And so we probably don't want to help them do that. So what if we say, before we forget, let's go Cursed Scroll here, and maybe give ourselves, I could even consider taking Troll Porter. Yeah, you know what? That's not out of the question. That is not out of the question. Because once we get rid of Roach, as long as we play Yawn first, that's still safe. So we Tourney Joust to get rid of you. Okay, Trident Infantry, we could use Coated Weapons on you. That way, now you have more cards in your deck than we do. So that means this will start to get boosted every turn. Okay, Ronvid is a little annoying. That's kind of his whole thing. So now, I mean, we could go Jan to get a little more thinning, but suppose it's worth a point per turn to play the Viper Witcher Adept, so we ought to play it early. And that will get Knickers out as well. Okay, Kaedweni Sergeant, not a huge play. Now let's go for our other Viper Witcher Adept. And that means next turn we can go Lambert for additional thinning. Now they pass. Okay, so this is ideal. That means we've already won round 1. However, we actually want to keep on playing because the more cards we play in round 1, the quicker we can trigger that Adrenaline 1 on Kolgrim in round 2 to push for the 2-0 win. So let's go first Lambert for all the thinning. That'll also get out Roach for even more thinning. Now we go Jan because we need to play him in round 1. Otherwise, we can't guarantee that we get Kolgrim. And now on our next turn, this is where we go with Troll Porter to banish these 2 cards that we don't really need and give ourselves even more thinning. There we go. We'll draw into our 2 biggest cards because we've already played Jan. And so now we can pass and take the round 1 win. Okay, and I like what we have here. I think we can go Ffion to protect, and then of course go Kolgrim plus Letho, and use Assire to give additional card to them in their deck to make Kolgrim more effective. So this is, of course, pretty much ideal. That's what happens when you play Jan in round 1. So we have a turn before we need to start playing Ffion, in which case that probably means we start with Assire, and what card do we want to put at the top of their deck? We could actually put Ronvid, which is an interesting choice because that means they won't get the carryover from him. It's not a huge deal, and they will, of course, draw into him in round 3, but he's not as significant in round 3. So I feel like, I mean, obviously we could put a Viper Witcher Adept, which is a bad card for them. So either one of them certainly works, but I feel like Ronvid is just too interesting of an option to pass up on. Okay, Blue Striped Scout. Oh. Range row presumably means that, yes, the plan for them was to spam Blue Stripes Commandos. So I think this might be a Kaedweni Revenants deck. That would explain Ronvid. It might have actually been pretty important that they had Ronvid so that they could use him to get a bunch of easy targets to transform one Revenant into another Revenant. So that could be key. Now we go Ffion, and we are, of course, pushing here. But they may not have thought that was the case. I mean, maybe they just thought we were misplaying when we played Assire, but no, that was intended. Okay, then it's Enchantress for a little bit of boost. And so the question now becomes, do we play Kolgrim? This would be the ideal timing. You play Kolgrim on this turn, then you play Letho into a second Kolgrim on our next turn. That way we have 2 Kolgrims on the board as soon as that Adrenaline 1 kicks in. Then we probably pass. The problem, or at least potential problem with that, is that if they have any way of dealing damage around our defender, then that means Kolgrim at 1 power is, of course, extremely vulnerable to that. If they have, say, Trident Infantry that they can boost, then that would be a problem. They have not yet played any Trident Infantries, so maybe we take this chance. They secure Mets, and that's not going to deal any damage, so that's perfect. Because now we go into Kolgrim number 2, and at this point, the Adrenaline 1 will kick in, so both of these guys are going to get boosted every turn. We could have potentially justified playing one of those Kolgrims in the range row in case they were going to Yrden us. Might have actually been preferable. We could use a leader ability to steal a card, but, I mean, this Enchantress does have some vitality, so it's actually 8 points of value, which is kind of nice. But I think we just stick with this for now. We will probably pass on our next turn, and we'll save Renew. That way, if they do find a way to shut us down, we can bring Kolgrim back in round 3 as well. So it's going to be really hard for them to keep pace with us, because at this point, it's, what, 8 points per Kolgrim per turn, 16 points total, even after we pass. So if they keep on playing normally, that's going to be pretty much impossible for them to catch us, unless they Yrden us. Roach Merciless, so yeah, this is absolutely a Revenants deck. But I don't think this is going to be fast enough. Because maybe they don't realize it, but we're about to pass and continue to get those boosts. Oh, it's 7 points. Ah, they got a little more thinning from that Blue Stripes Commando. That's unfortunate. Theoretically means it's a little bit easier for them to catch us now, but I still think we should be fine against anything but Irden. It's Selkirk, which they cannot quite use to get rid of our defender unless they give him additional boosts. Oh, well, actually, they can. I take it back. So, no defenders anymore means suddenly they have a few more options available to them. If they have a way to lock one of the Kolgrims, then they might be able to catch us. It's a Blue Stripe Scout, so that means more commandos, but we're still getting boosted. So, of course, we're expecting they're probably going to have Drog as their finisher, but I'm not sure that's going to be sufficient. It's Bloody Bear. Oh, well, that's a concern. Very well played. It was almost enough for us to hold on there. We do still have Renew, so we can still bring back a Kolgrim, though. Okay, so that means the plan here will be put another card into their deck here with Cynthia to set up Kolgrim, use Treason and Coated Weapons to deal damage, and maybe get another card on top of their deck, and then near the end, use Renew to play Kolgrim again from our graveyard and get a little more value that way. So I think we probably stick with this. Yeah, I mean, we could potentially get an Assassination instead of a Coated Weapons. I think we might prefer Coated Weapons, though. So they do still have one more card than us, but we know they've played a lot of their synergies here. If they have Pavetta and a way to get all of those Blue Stripes Commandos back, then we're in trouble. So I am not pleased to see Pavetta here. Why don't we use Cynthia? They'll go Botchling. And then tell you what, they've already used all their leader ability charges, so they cannot give Zeal to one of those Blue Stripes Commandos. So I think our plan here is, timing-wise, depending on when they play it, we may be able to seize one of those Commandos and prevent them from pulling off their big combo. So that would be perfect. Now I think we go Coated Weapons on Botchling, because that is a bit dangerous of a card, and we can put it back at the top of their deck, making Kolgrim stronger. Okay, it's a Durnian Mauler. So now we go Renew into Kolgrim, and we do have a 5-power Kolgrim, because this is the one that Letho transformed into, so it's slightly better. So we do this, and nab you, and let's go, I guess, range row. And now, after they put additional cards in their deck, that means Kolgrim is actually stronger than he was before. Just one Kolgrim this time, but that's a 13-point boost per turn. And it is Drog. So I was really hoping that they were going to play one of those Blue Stripes Commandos, because then we could use our leader ability to seize it and prevent them from summoning out all those other Blue Stripes Commandos. However, Blue Stripes Commandos do not have Zeal, so if they play one on their next turn, they're not going to have time to use that ability. They're not going to have time to summon out all the other ones from their deck, because they don't have any leader ability charges anymore to give them Zeal. So in that case, why don't we use Treason, and we need to go on this one here, so we still have a target that we can actually steal. And another big boost for Kolgrim means that somehow this last card needs to be worth practically 30 points. Is it Irden? Because that is just about the only way they can win this. It's Falibor. But that's not enough, so we'll take the win. Alright, so going up against Northern Realms here. And they'll go first. Okay, so we have Yon. That's important. We don't want to have Letho, Kolgrim, or Ffion in our hand, because those are cards we obviously want to play. So let's get rid of Letho in that case. And our hand here is not all that good, outside of course, Yon. And that means that Troll Porter is perhaps an option to banish the remainder of our hand, and after having played Yon, we draw into all of our good stuff after that. So I am intrigued. Okay, it's Redanian Elite first. And that, you would think, would be fairly easy for us to get de-boosted. We could with Assassination, although maybe we wait to see if there's something else we can do with Treason to set that up. In that case, why don't we first go with the Operator to create a Viper Witcher Adept on both sides, because when we do this, that should get out Roach, which means that we will have fewer cards in our deck than their deck, so our Adept will get boosted, whereas theirs will not. Okay, then it's Regis Bloodlust. Whoa. Didn't see that one coming. Okay. Why don't we play our other Viper Witcher Adept? Okay, Caravan Vanguard. We'll get a few of them, which means we may even consider going Obsidian Mirror here to create additional copies of, most importantly, that Viper Witcher Adept, since even though it will be a 1-power copy, it will still get boosted every turn, which is pretty nice. So why don't we go that route? And we'll also get Knickers out. Okay, it's another Caravan Vanguard. Now they get the Bonded ability, though, so it's a little bit stronger. And I think we might go for the same thing here. Just make sure that we get that Adept, so that once again we get another engine on the board. Okay, Vesemir. Oh, okay, that does make sense as to why they made all those copies. We could, however, use Treason to take both these guys out, or... I mean, they have several units that are right around the same power right next to each other. But let's make sure that, first and foremost, we do play Jan in this round. And we could even consider stealing their Viper Witcher Adept with our leader ability to get one more engine on our side of the board. I think we go for it. Because now it's, what, 5 getting boosted every turn? They'll go Yennefer. Looks like melee row for the damage, which we had a bunch of 1-power units. So it was kind of overkill. The damage didn't do that much to us. They had a little bit of armor, so not entirely sure how that balanced out there. They did use their stratagem, which would suggest that that was the last turn they planned to take. Let's definitely use our Witcher Trio now. Get some more thinning. Okay, they're going to Heat Wave on one of our Adepts now. They did not catch us. So, standard Gwent best practices would be for us to pass here, force them to go at least 2 cards down if they want to catch us. It doesn't really align with our Kolgrim strategy, but maybe we run with it nonetheless, because they may be digging themselves into a bit of a hole here. So let's not stop them from doing that. If they want to go further, that's fine with us. Okay, Trident Infantry, that is also going to be insufficient. We'll use a leader ability charge on that and get a little bit of damage that way, but that's still not going to be enough after we get our boosts. So now they go even more cards down. It's Gaernel, so they do have a target. And now that will be sufficient, but at what cost? Okay, so we drew into Renew, Letho, and Ffion, and of course, after we played Jan in round 1, we're guaranteed to run to all of our biggest cards here. We were planning on playing Troll Porter in round 1 if they had passed when we expected them to pass, except they didn't. Now that we have our key cards, means Troll Porter no longer a good play, so we should get rid of this and get Kolgrim in return. And we might stick with all these guys now, because I think of our remaining cards, I mean, we have Cynthia, which does give us some additional setup for Kolgrim, which would be kind of nice, but we can do that in round 3. That's also fine. Now, they should dry pass. They do. Okay. Did we have a throwaway? I suppose we can use Assire to put a weak card back into their deck. What would we like that to be? Maybe Trident Infantry probably be the answer, or Redanian Elite. I think maybe Trident Infantry. So let's do that, because that will further increase the difference between the number of cards in their deck and the number of cards in our deck. Okay, so as I was saying, Troll Porter, no longer a good option for us, so let's dump that. And Coded Weapons can help set up our Kolgrim combo, so in fact, are we guaranteed to get another Coded Weapons here? We are. So that might be worth getting rid of something else to make room for that, although, is there anything we want to get rid of? Would we dump an Assassination to get a Coded Weapons? It's potentially losing a little bit of damage in the process, but you know what? I think against Northern Realms, we should have enough targets to hit with Coded Weapons. So I think that's feasible. And obviously nothing for us to target here with any of our damaging special cards. Actually, what are we planning to do with Renew? I suppose we could replay Assire and use that to get another card from their graveyard back into their deck. Yeah, that might be the play. We could either do that now or we could lead off with Cynthia. I think either way it is functionally pretty much the same, but maybe we keep a little bit of flexibility by holding on to Renew. Okay, it's Yennefer. That's unfortunate. So we could go Coded Weapons on her. We could go Assassination on her. Obviously, she's small enough that Coded Weapons would take her out, but it would put her at the top of their deck, which we may not want to do. I mean, she's not a Northern Realms card, so still be a little bit difficult for them to draw into her. So maybe we're okay with going Coded Weapons like that. Triss, also small enough for us to use Coded Weapons on her. So, I mean, she's already done her thing. She did the hand boosting, but I guess, why not set up Kolgrim even more? Okay, Stratum Infantry. And that's the card we put at the top of their deck, right? So, I mean, we could do something like that yet again with Renew into Assire. Or we could start to set up Ffion, Kolgrim, and Letho, because that is going to take us a little bit of time to make that happen. So, that being said, we have card advantage here, so still not that much of a rush. So, we could get rid of Stratum Infantry with Assassination. I suppose, why not? They were probably planning on using some boosts to turn that into a bit of a weapon. Well, it's another Stratum Infantry. Okay, maybe we don't overreact to that one. We'll keep Treason, which obviously can't really do much when they only have one unit on the board. So now I think it is time to go for Ffion. Okay, oh, Philippa. Yes, that's one reason to delay a little bit. Not enough to actually take out Ffion. That could have done damage, did do damage around our defender, so if we had played Kolgrim really early, then it probably would have taken him out. So obviously, wasn't about to do that. We actually do still have one turn remaining, I think, in which we can go Renew into, what were we saying, Assire, and use that to give them probably a retaining elite, or at this point, we could make it a Trident Infantry. So there is a pretty huge difference between the number of cards in our deck and the number of cards in their deck, which means Kolgrim is going to be worth a whole lot, and they are not going to have much time to do anything about him. Okay, Siege Support, which is not a concern here, outside of actually that Trident Infantry. If we are to play Kolgrim right now, which would be the way to maximize our potential point total, with some boost on Trident Infantry, there's a non-zero chance that that damage happens to Kolgrim and take him out, because he's not going to get boosted on this turn. The reason why we would play him now is that way we have both Kolgrim and Kolgrim number 2 set up and ready to go as soon as that Adrenaline 1 starts kicking in. But I think we play it safe here. No need to get super aggressive when we have card advantage. So we might as well do that. And it means one less turn of double Kolgrim, but I think we should still be fine. I mean, Pax, yeah, was going to boost Trident Infantry, and again, potentially, along with their leader ability, hit our Kolgrim. So, best to avoid having that happen, because now we can play Kolgrim safely, and he'll get boosted by 9 every turn. And so that's actually is already enough if we were to pass right now, but we have Letho for Kolgrim number 2, so that way we get 2 rounds of those big boosts and take the win. Alright, so going up against Skellige here, and we'll go first. Okay, so we definitely want to get rid of Letho. We do have Jan in our starting hand. That's good. We can guarantee that we get Letho and Kolgrim in round 2 in that case, but we don't want them showing up in round 1. This is problematic, the number of key cards we have showing up in our hand. Yikes. Okay, so we can get one of them back into our deck with Cursed Scroll, and that may end up being Roach. The only problem with that is that means that we will have Renew still in our hand, which is a card that we would like to save, so we at least have the option, after playing Kolgrim in round 2, bringing him back and playing him again in round 3 in case we don't win round 1. That is perhaps us getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, because let's begin by going with Jan, I think. I mean, he is one of our few gold cards, so it's going to be actually a little bit tough to trigger Roach unless we play a proactive Viper Witch or Adept that is not immediately going to get boosted. I think it still probably has to be on. Okay, it's Coral. So I wonder if they're maybe using the new Magic Compass card. Not that that's the only purpose for discard package, but we're probably going to want to switch a card into our hand in order to get rid of Roach. So why don't we go with use Curse Scroll to get Cynthia, because that will add some junk to their deck. Put Roach back, and Cynthia is a gold card, so we can play her and get Roach out. But before we do that, let's use Assassination to take out Coral, to minimize the amount of damage they get from what will almost certainly be some additional discard that they plan to do. Because, yep, there it is with Berna. So this is actually a very big problem, to tell you the truth. They're discarding cards. We're going to be thinning out a whole bunch of cards. So the whole source of power of our deck is having a significant difference in the number of cards in our deck and their deck. And so if we're both trying to thin, then suddenly that's not the case anymore. So that might actually mean that we deliberately do not play the Troll Porter. I mean, we can sabotage them to a certain extent by going with Cynthia, but basically what I'm getting at is, do we deliberately try to minimize our thinning and just have them be the ones that thin, and we try to stay as close to the maximum number of cards in our deck as possible, and that's how we get our power for Kolgrim? Kind of hard to say. I think we still go Cynthia here. It does add a card to their deck, which, since they're trying to thin, maybe that helps us out a little bit. But it also means that the Viper Witcher Adept is not active here, and it's going to be pretty hard to make that active, and Operator would normally be a way to get a Viper Witcher Adept. And that means we don't have many options here. I mean, we could end this round really early and pass here, or put out weapons, put one of these back on the top of their deck. I'm not super thrilled about that, because it does technically give them more thinning in the next round, which is not what we want them to be doing. So, yeah, it does put us in a rather difficult spot here. I think we might actually need to do that. Okay, Highland Warlord. Give them some additional damage on their raids. And of course that means they'll win round 1. And because we played Yon, we guarantee that we draw into all of our big guys here, which means we definitely do not want to be using Troll Porter, at least not until we play all these cards, and that's only going to be at the end of the round. So perhaps we do abandon ship when it comes to us reducing the number of cards in our deck. So that means get rid of you. Not pleased about that. We also would have liked to have gotten rid of the Viper Witcher Adepts, but we might need to get rid of Knickers now instead. Maybe we actually dump you. And Treason, at least, is a good card. Now, they did play one more card than us in round 1, and so we're hoping that they just play a couple of throwaways here and then let us do whatever we want for the rest of the round. And that means that even if Viper Witcher Adept is not going to get boosted, then that could be one of our throwaways. This is not enough to put you back on the top of their deck. We also don't have quite enough range to seize you, unfortunately. That's put us in a bit of an odd spot. Problem about Operator into Viper Witcher Adept is that it will get boosted on their side, so again, wanted to find a way to not force ourselves into doing that, but that's why playing Knickers from hand might actually be something that we're going to need to do here. But I think it might turn into just coded weapons that unfortunately does not proc the death blow. Oh. Not pleased to see Iced, because we wanted them to be keeping this round short, and if they just played one of their biggest cards, then they are probably looking to push quite a bit further here. In which case, I think we are probably going to find ourselves playing Kolgrim and Letho to get ourselves a second Kolgrim in this round. But this is not the ideal way to set that up in so many ways. We want to be cards down in order to have multiple turns of Kolgrim triggering on Adrenaline 1, whereas now we're just going to have 2 turns of that at most. So, yikes. And we don't exactly have the best stuff leading up to that. Treason doesn't really work here. I mean, we could steal Iced. Tell you what, I think we have to steal Iced. And then we're going to play Knickers from hand, is what we're going to do. Because that, at the very least, avoids us having to thin ourselves. Because as we were saying, we actually want them to be doing the thinning at this stage. I think we've established. So, tell you what we can do. We can play Viper Witcher Adept before we play Operator. That way, Viper Witcher Adept is just a 4-point body on our side of the board, but it means that when we play Operator, we will not have to spawn Viper Witcher Adept on their side of the board, because although it wouldn't be any long-term value for us, it would be for them. So it basically makes Operator less of a negative for us later on, although technically it would mean we have one more target for Obsidian Mirror, but that's very minor comparatively speaking. So the dream would be that after taking Ice, they would be less inclined to push hard here. Does give us one more target for Obsidian Mirror, and a decent target for Treason if/when they play cards next to that, but that has not yet happened, and they also do lead ability as well, so I was gonna say maybe you consider playing Ffion a little bit early, and that way slightly fewer bricks that we are forced into playing here, but I guess we set ourselves up for the Operator, so we can play this now, and we are not forced into playing any bronze units with it, which is good, because we would have given an Adept to both us and our opponent, and it's worth something to our opponent, it's not worth much of anything to us. All because this is basically the perfect counter, what they're playing right now. They are messing with our formula, so now we can use Treason and hit that Skirmisher. We'd ideally wait until they play some other stuff in this melee row, and we do have enough targets for the Obsidian Mirror. It's not super meaningful when the only card that has an ability would be the On-Crate Raiders. So, I mean, then again, I'm not sure we have much choice in the matter. So, I guess we're going for it. Morkfarger, they're playing him from hand. That's odd. Now they do have 3 cards here in the melee row. Unfortunately, their smallest card is in the middle, so this would be probably still the best target for Treason, so we're dealing 8 damage total, but we would love if this was in the middle instead. I mean, you actually would get re-summoned onto the board, so maybe less so the case there. Yeah, we actually do want to drop you down to exactly 1 power in that case. And I think that is what we're going to have to do here, because otherwise, it's Renew, which we would like to save for round 3, or it's we start up on the Ffion, Kolgrim, and Letho combo, and we'd like to wait before we do that. So that is worth a fair bit of points there, and I'm not sure it matters too much who we hit, as long as it's not Morkfarg. No pass. Oh boy. Are we gonna get away with it? We might get away with it. Now, technically speaking, as I was saying before, we actually want to have fewer cards than our opponent in hand, so that we trigger Kolgrim's Adrenaline 1 as quickly as possible. So that would mean, technically, we ideally not have these cards in our hand at all right now. We just throw away cards so that we are just using Kolgrim, Ffion, and Letho in round 3. We could play them all now and then just rely on Renew to play Kolgrim and only Kolgrim, but I don't think we should do that, because they have their leader ability. So without the defender, Kolgrim may be toast. Okay, and we draw into all 3 of the Witcher trio. So let's dump them. I suppose that's not a coincidence, because there are 7 provisions and we did play Jan. So we were guaranteed to draw into our highest cards, but it's just that we played so little in round 1 that we still have a bunch of things that we would have ideally already gotten rid of at this stage. The question is, are we relying on them to thin further, in which case we might deliberately play an early Lambert so that we don't thin to make Kolgrim more powerful? Or do we say, no, we still think we're going to thin more than they are, in which case, yes, we do play Lambert the normal way, and maybe we use Assire to put a card back in their deck. Because right now, a 2-card difference in our decks means Kolgrim is not doing very much. So I think we may deliberately encourage them to thin and not thin ourselves by deliberately bricking this Lambert. And they're like, what on earth are you doing right now? I don't like that, though. I think we all know where that's headed. We do have a free Renew for what it's worth, which I'm just thinking about what that could potentially be used on. If we were trying to thin more than they were, then we could use Cynthia to add more cards to their deck, but at this point that might backfire on us. Ice is too expensive to use it on. Maybe on-crate raiders might actually be our best option. But either way, I think we're looking to get rid of Sucrus right now. Because, in case you couldn't tell, that was almost certainly Chad setup. There it is, Magic Compass. Okay, so yes, suspected that might have been what they were going for. They would have ideally played that in an earlier round. Maybe we bricked their setup a little bit because we made round 1 so short, and they aren't going to get all the way down to 0 cards. They do get their defender, so now there's a 5-card difference between our decks, which means now Kolgrim's starting to do something. I mean, if they have Alyssa, they could put Magic Compass back into their deck, and if they have a way to play this from their deck, then they could get down to 0, unless we use Assire to mess with that, but I'm not sure we want to go that far. I think what we do is we go Assire on our side, get back Knickers or Roach, and Roach will immediately get summoned. So it's basically just a 10-point point slam. Still expecting to see an Chad soon. They might be saving that because they know they don't have Sucrus, so it's not like playing him early makes that much of a difference. Oh, okay, more damage. Yep. Alright, so now the question becomes, when are we playing Renew? Because we're gonna wanna... No, I think it is probably time for Ffion, then Kolgrim, then Letho, and that gives us a little bit of a buffer. If they do drop an Chad, we can then use Renew on maybe even Assire to take a little bit of that damage for us. Of course, any damage will get rid of Kolgrim, but let's cross that bridge when we come to it. There is also their leader ability, which they've not yet used, so that will discard another card. So, in theory, means Kolgrim may be strong enough to be significant if he lasts, which is the scary part. Okay, that is extremely weak on Ffion, because I believe Rupture is damage based on base power, right? And he has 1 base power, so congratulations, that does basically nothing. You should have done it on Roach. Now I think is when we play Kolgrim, because it is still possible they may have ways to deal damage beyond our defender, but we snuck them in there before they played Chad, which I was thinking they might have been planning to do. It might have been they were going to use their second golden compass, rather Magic Compass, to make that happen, and he wasn't in their starting deck. But of course, as we were saying, we might have bricked their Magic Compass a bit. Stunning blow, okay. A lot of damage. But, technically speaking, we can still play Letho to give ourselves a second Kolgrim. Now the question becomes, do we do this and have 2 Kolgrims in the same row, or do we do it in the melee row where this one will be unprotected, but it'll be less susceptible to something like a Nirden? But might be more concerned about a Morkfar than a Nirden at this stage, and we still have a little bit of a point slam we can get from Renew. So, alright, I think we row stack. So both of them will proc. It's 5 points per turn, so it is enough to catch up to them here. What is their last card, though? They steal their leader ability, so they can get rid of our defender, or Roach. I imagine they're going to go for the defender, though. It is Chad. Oh. And then Bran. Oh. Yeah, that's not going to work. So we'll take the win, even with a deck that was seemingly the perfect counter against us. Even with our hand seemingly completely bricked, we still find a way to win. So there's a look at a Nilfgaard Troll Porter Kolgrim deck. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.